How's it going? Graduation. It continues to go downhill. This album's not good. Theologically, obviously, theologically, because you can't say anything bad about graduation. It's so good. I love the song about him having sex, and the song about him having sex, and the song about him having sex. Yeah, that one's really good. Oh yeah, the one about him having sex. That also good. Good morning. Starting with D tier. It and it doesn't get much better. They tell you read this, eat this, don't look around, just peep this, preach this, teach us Jesus. And he again not saying anything about anything really. He's what he's doing is just implying that listening to Jesus is a chore, like, and it's just something you do to follow the rules, which is obviously not good, right? Like it might be true of his life, doesn't make it better at all. Maybe it's a bit better because it's honest, but it's not better because it's true and good. D tier, stronger, hell tier, not good because right now thou hast forsaken us. It's a reference to Jesus on the cross. I think if Kanye even put any thought into this verse, being as charitable as possible. Kanye is referencing Jesus on the cross, where he's saying, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Which Jesus wasn't really actually believing that God has forsaken him. He was referencing Psalm 22, which is like an insane, like 500 years before Jesus, at the very least. Like historically, we have like record of that. Before Jesus, and it like describes like exactly what's happening to Jesus as he's dying. So he's referencing that verse, which is how you reference that verse. You said like the first line. So that's super cool. But that's not really what he's doing. I'm pretty sure he's just saying, yeah, God left us because obviously if bad things happen, God can't work when bad things happen, guys. God can't work when bad things happen, guys. Obviously, Jesus, the apostles, all getting tortured to death. No, God, that. Listen, let's not think about that. Let's not think about the fact that God clearly is still there even when people are suffering. Even though it's hard. Like, I get it's hard. I'm just saying that God has forsaken you because like bad things happen is cringe and dumb. New Gospel, Homie, take 6. This is not actually as bad as you would think. Assuming, of course, he meant it charitably, which I don't. At this point in Kanye's life, I don't really give him the benefit of the doubt here. Fun fact. The gospel means good news. And really specifically, it's the good news about the new emperor, I think. Cut this if it's not true. But so, yeah, I was wrong. It was about like a military victory, not actually about the coming of a new emperor. My bad, pimp. I messed up there. Not what he's talking about, though. And then this, I hate it. If God put me in your plans or not, I'm tripping. This drink got me saying a lot, but I know that God put you in front of me. I love implying that God endorses premarital sex. Yeah, no, God put you in front of me, so that like let's have sex. It's all because you're so hot. Oh, it's so cringe. And like, no, I'm gonna leave that. It's insanely cringe. Also, boom, verse on screen. Boom, verse on screen. God does not tempt us. We are tempted when our own desires take control of us. This song sucks. Hell tier. Get it out of here. Also overplayed. L plus overplayed plus hell tier plus ratio. I wonder. This is going in D tier because he's doing things. Okay, we'll get into it. A psychic read my lifeline. Told me my lifetime. I don't know the rest of the words. Point being, it is explicitly stated that you should not talk to spiritual mediums. You should not talk to psychics. They're tapping in. If magic powers are not coming from God, they're coming from demons. And so don't go to psychic because they're not getting their power from God. It's bad. It's cringe. Next line. Heaven will watch. God calling from the hotlines. Also, him being like really arrogant, talking about how, yeah, no, God, I'm so good. Even God's hitting me up. It's not good. It's just arrogance. I'm giving it D tier and not hell tier. It's just really bad. It's not actually him saying things that are wrong. He's just talking about sin and being really arrogant. So next up, Can't Tell Me Nothing. It's C tier because it's honest thoughts that are bad, but at least it's honest. He's not trying to say that this is like good or true. Opening verse. I had a dream. I could buy my way to heaven. When I awoke, I spent that on a necklace. I told God I'd be back in a second. Man, it's so hard not to act reckless. This is just honest. Talking about it the way that he is. All right, and I think it's fairly obvious that he's saying like this isn't good. I know this is bad, but I can't stop myself from doing it. And so I'm not taking away points for him admitting his flaws, and I think he knows that they're flaws in this instance for some reason. Next line, I know that Jesus died for us, but I couldn't tell you who decide wars. What do I think about this? It's good that he's admitting that Jesus died for us, but he's saying I couldn't tell you who decide wars. I think he's probably making a political statement, and if he is, that's fine. In hindsight, maybe with his recent remarks about a certain ethnic group, it's probably not great, but Jesus dying for us, yes, that's good. If he's saying that, like, oh, God is designing wars and he's evil for that, then that's cringe, because there's a difference between God allowing something to happen and God causing something to happen. If you have your kid on the playground and you see him like, I don't know, like running headfirst at a curb with no thought in mind.
He goes as fast as he can towards curbs with no trick in mind. He doesn't have a clue what he's gonna do, and he never figures it out.
And you could stop him, or you could let him learn his lesson. And sometimes it's for the best that kids, if they won't listen to you, you let them do bad things and then feel the consequences of it. That's a completely fine thing to do, and God does that for us. Like a lot, he does that a lot in the Bible too, where Israel will be like ignoring him for 100 years, and then he'll be like, "All right, you know what? Gloves are off." And by gloves are off, I mean I'm removing my protection from you. See how you like it when the natural consequences of your actions happen. And he gives them over to their sin, and yada, yada, yada. So that's God allowing sin. God causing sin would be me walking over to my son and pushing him onto the concrete, which is obviously not okay. And God doesn't do that. So if he was saying God is evil for doing this, I'd take away a lot of points. This would be instant hell tier. But I think he might be making more of a political statement he's using Jesus to rhyme with a political statement, which I don't think is necessarily like super wrong. So the devil wear Prada, Adam Eve wear nada. This is actually just a really fun line. I like it. It's a fun bar. It doesn't really make sense. He's saying devil wear Prada, referencing the movie, and Adam and Eve wear nada because like they're naked. Oh, that's crazy. So yeah, whatever. Then because when you try hard, that's when you die hard. Y'all homies looking like why God when they reminisce over you, my God. So another thing where he's struggling with why does evil happen in the world? Why does God? If you're less familiar with the subject, you'll say, why is God causing this? If you're more familiar, you'll say, God, why are you allowing this? And that's a fine thing to ask. It's fine to ask, why do you allow this to God? Because at least you're being open and honest, and we've talked about this. But we should still trust God, because like he's God, like the smartest man on earth doesn't hold a candle to him. He's literally infinite. He is an infinite being that exists outside of time. How are you questioning him? And then if you were going to question him, right? Let's say you didn't trust that God was good, even having infinite power, and you somehow believe that knowing everything couldn't make you good, and creating everything couldn't make you good. Here's like everyone can look at someone dying for someone else and see that that's a good act, and that's what God did, right? Jesus died for us. God died for us, and that's like the hallmark of a good man, right? And not only died for us. Like, oh, we were walking across the street and he pushed you out of the way. It's like the anime, like, push you out of the way of the truck. It's like, no, we set fire to our own house. And then we're, like, standing in our own house. And God runs into the house, throws it out of the house, and then burns down in it, right? And, like, burns to death, saving us from our own stupidity. Like, that's a more accurate representation of what Jesus did for us. And so, someone who would burn to death, and let's be honest, he suffered much longer than he would have if he was simply burned to death, because he was tortured to death for hours and then died on the cross, and then also bore the weight of all sin, which is like a psychological and spiritual toll that we can't even understand. If someone does that for me, I know that they're good. And so when I have these questions like, why God, why are you allowing this? I think of Jesus and I'm like, okay, someone doing that cannot be evil. I know that they're good. I know that God's good. so I trust him. All right. Everything I am, this is going in C tier. The only line is I need to talk to somebody, pastor. The church want tithe, so I can't afford to pay. The tithe, it means 1/10. It is giving to your church 1/10 of your income so that they can actually like do things, so the pastors can get paid so that like they can serve the community, so that you can have a building that like actually honors God. So you have a place that people can congregate, all that. Tithing is important. Your tithe, I've never heard of someone tithing and they can't afford to pay bills because of it. I'm sure it happens, but I also know that people that I know that do tithe also get blessed in their lives. And so it's an actual thing where you can say you're stepping out on a limit where you're saying, God, I'm following you, I'm giving money, and I don't know how I'm going to make it through this week or whatever, this month, this period or whatever, and then watch God provide, or you suffer for God. And that's a noble, glorious thing in his eyes. And that's something you wouldn't do if you didn't actually believe, right? So it's kind of where the rubber hits the road. And again, of course, there are the concerns of people saying like, oh, but I'm just giving money to the church. They're just taking my money. And if you're going to a church where you don't trust them to steward your funds well, if you're giving money to a church and you're thinking they're not going to put it to good use, I wouldn't be going to that church, right? Like, I think that makes sense. So that's my thoughts. C tier, because it's like, it's really not good, but it's really not horrible. He's being honest, but I think he's maybe overrepresenting the issue. I don't think that there are that many people that can't afford to give 1/10 of their income to God and like can't save money elsewhere to do that. The tithe, specifically being 1/10 of your income, comes from the Old Testament, but in the New Testament, you actually don't need to give exactly 10%. We're just called to be generous and to give joyfully. So just wanted to correct that. You don't actually have to give 1/10 of your income. It could be very generous to just give like 1% if you're like really on the edge. I just wanted to correct that here at the end. Big Brother. D tier, could be hell tier. We're keeping it D tier. I dropped Jesus Walks, now I'm on the steeple. This could be hell tier, as it would be in, I think it's No More Parties for LA, where, no. Ultralight Beam later, where Chance is like, I made Jesus Walks, I'm never going to hell, which is like, no, that's not how that works. Your actions don't get you into hell. That's hell tier. Like, your actions don't get you into heaven. I thought we covered this in every single video. Is that we're never good enough. We can't do enough things. We can't do a good enough thing to get into heaven. We trust Jesus' work on the cross, and then that gets us into heaven. And then our actions are a way of saying thank you to God and following his footsteps as we see how good of a man he is and how good of a God he is. And we're following his footsteps to love others as he has loved us. So, completely irrelevant to the point, by the way. This is the Big Brother gets D tier, not hell tier, because I don't think he's actually talking about that. I think he's saying that, oh, I'm at the top now, because like the steeple, if you don't know, is the top of the church. And so he's saying, oh, I'm at the top of the rap world because Jesus Walks is so good. And that's like, it's braggadocious and cringe, and he's using religious metaphor to do it, which is also cringe, so it gets a D tier. It could be hell tier if he actually meant, though, that, oh yeah, I did this thing, so now I'm not going to hell, which he will say later, which is cringe and is bad and does go in hell tier. But for now, Big Brother goes in D tier. That's Graduation. That is the end of his school trilogy. The end of, like, maybe what a lot of people say is his best albums. But in my opinion, as a theologist, I'm not going to be wrong for the joke. In my opinion, as a theologian, that's not real. I'm not a theologian. I'm just a guy. I'm literally just a guy. But in my opinion, it is kind of only up from here. Is that true? I'm trying to think of all the. It's all the way. It's only up until a recent album that will not be named at present. But that's it.